Welcome to the John freaking Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. I'm Doc, and this is the John freaking Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right. This week, I have a real treat for our listeners. Today, I am talking to Braden Jr., whom some of you might recognize from the incredible documentary Highline, which was produced and created by one of our former guests and friend of the podcast, Chris Smead from Outmersive Films. Well, welcome to the John freaking Muir Pod, Benny. How's it going?
Hey, doing really good. You doing all right?
Absolutely. Fantastic. I'm doing even better now that we have connected and we're having the talk. This is great.
Yeah, it sometimes it takes a while to get me to be able to sit down and get in one spot because I'm going in like so many different directions, but we made it happen. So I'm here for as long as we need to be. Okay,
fantastic. Hey, I know you've spent quite a few miles on the trail. You got a lot of trail miles under your boots, and we have this great, unique American long trail tradition of assigning trail names to hikers. Mm-hmm. In all of your time on the trail, have you picked up a trail name?
Yeah, actually, my trail name is Plug It In. Kind of got that trail name whenever I was hiking in the Smokies. Kind of doing like a section hike, along the AT in 2015, a section hike the lower part of the AT up to Damascus in the Grayson Highlands. But I'm an electrical contractor, and I was wearing one of my company T-shirts, and someone seen it, and they were like, "Hey, plug it in," and it just kind of like stuck from there.
Nice. I love the name, Plug It In, but it is polysyllabic, which, in case of an emergency on the trail, getting all those syllables out to warn you of something happening. I mean, that might be a bit too long. Does anybody ever shorten it to just plug?
Yeah, some people just say plug, and, anymore, just people call me by my name, Benny. Ever since the film came out, most people just call me Benny, and that's fine too. That's what my parents named me, so I guess that's good enough.
Okay, so you'll answer to either or all three.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Very good. Hey, do you get recognized much on the street or on the trail from the film?
Sometimes I do. Here locally, which back in 2017, I set the fastest known time for the Smokies 900 miler, and I actually did it twice in a single year. There's only like 5 of us that are on this list that's done it, and I'm the only one that's done it twice, and definitely in a single year. But that got a lot of local media attention, so a lot of people recognize me from that. But I have been way out west, and people recognize me from the film, so that's kind of cool. And I have a small little, mediocre social media presence, so a few people will recognize me from that.
Nice. Now let's talk about that FKT real quick. So it's the Smokies 900.
Yeah, Smokies 900 miler.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually only 800 miles of trail inside the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, but years ago there used to be 900, and over time trails get decommissioned. They no longer maintain them, but the name stood, but the mileage got lessened. But most people will typically do 1,500 to 2,000 miles, somewhere in that neighborhood, in order to complete those. Since it's a trail system, a lot of mix and mingling of trails that go in different directions, so it's really hard to do them in a certain way. I know for myself, my first record was 944 miles in 78 days, I think. My second one, that was a wintertime FKT. My second one was in the following fall in the same year, and it was 924 miles in 43 days.
Wow.
Since then, the record has been broken twice, both by really good friends who wanted a shot at it, and they did a phenomenal job. And right now, I think the record's like 28 days or 27 days.
Wow.
But my record for the amount of miles, the limited amount of miles, still stands. I have the most efficient routes at this point. And at the time that I did it, Bullhead was still closed and one other small trail was closed. So it wasn't like a lot of mileage that was like deleted that I did not have to hike. And those were closed from the 2016 Smokies fire that occurred. So yeah, that kind of gives you a little like rundown of that whole process.
Yeah. So what are in terms of the planning and the logistics? I mean, how did you come up with that most efficient route? Did you have a general sense because of your familiarity, or did you have to do some research and kind of map it all out?
Well, I was familiar with a little bit. I used a book that Lizette and I wrote to basically geared towards day hiking. And I essentially took a lot of those day hikes, combined them into like a backpacking trip. And that's how I kind of I trimmed her books based on 1,050 miles. And so I trimmed that down quite a bit by not having to go in and out on a lot of these trails. And whenever I went to do my second one, a good friend of mine had a computer program or access to a computer program, kind of like what UPS uses, a lot of cities use so that their trucks are driving efficiently in the town. We use that same system. We're able to get a mapping system from the Smokies and overlaid that. And it told me where I was kind of like hiking too much. So I was able to trim back my miles even more so. And the funny thing is, between the first and the second hike, even more trails were opened up. So that just shows you how much more efficiently I was able to like trim that down. But that's how I did. I basically used a software to design for like UPS and cities, municipalities doing their garbage drops.
Right. Now that brings up a big question for me, because I think there's I don't know if it's a myth or if it's actual fact, but something about UPS drivers, because of that mapping software, they only make right turns. And so did that apply to you? Did that apply to you out there in the Smokies? You could only make a right turn.
I can go left too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I can go left.
All right. Nice. Very good. Hey, I'm going to give you a heads up on a segment we have towards the end of the episode called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week.
Okay.
And that's at that point, I will turn to you and I'll say, plug it in. What bit of trail wisdom can you share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better? So I expect you to drop trail wisdom throughout the episode here, but you'll still be on the hook for the official pro tip at the end there.
I got it.
Okay. Hey, another feature we've been doing this season is the Must Bring Gear Review, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company Outdoor Vitals. And here's how it works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day hike, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. So plug it in. What's your must-bring piece of gear?
I would say my Z-Pax duplex. I've been using that tent since 2015. Matter of fact, got one of my duplexes right there. I don't know, just being able to have that extra room inside the tent. You know, I've got plenty of room just for me. And if it's been a rainy, wet day and I'm all like nasty, I can throw all my wet gear, all my wet clothes on one side of the tent. And I've got this nice dry place on the other. It's super lightweight. Typically, I think most of those run about 21 ounces or something like that for a two-person tent. Really solid. Hasn't ever let me down. I've actually used it in -14 degree temperatures. Wow. I've used it in like remnants of tropical storms, so very high wind situations, blizzard situations. So it's a pretty solid tent for what it is.
Now, is that the tent that you were using in the film Highline?
Yeah, actually, that one is the one I was using in Highline.
Mm-hmm.
Several camo duplexes.
Yeah, it looked like a number of the guys were using that same tent. It looked very similar.
Yeah. Some of them were using, probably using like a Plexamid or an Altaplex or something like that. Duplex is pretty popular just because of the weight and the amount of room that you get in it. A lot of people really like that tent, and I don't blame them. It's been a rock solid tent for me. I've not ever had any like major issues or failures from that tent. I've gotten some situations where I've damaged my tent before. Whenever I was on the John Muir Trail just before we did Highline, during that late summer, you're dealing with a lot of thunderstorms.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I would hear lightning or thunder, I would pull over, set my tent up, get in it, get out of the hail and rain, and eat me a quick snack, take me a short nap, and by then that storm's gone. I can get back on the trail and push for more miles. And just that really quick setup, take down. Some of the times the storm was on me, so I need to be very fast and might not look for like sharp rocks or something like that, because everything's granite out there and everything is not forgiving. It's not like here in the East where we're dealing with a lot of sandstone or limestone. So it was, I'd gotten like a small little hole in one of my things, so in the bottom and in my netting. And I think it's either from a rock or just where I just folding it up really quick and shoving it into pack and picking up more miles.
Mm-hmm. Now, since we're going to get into a little bit of a gear discussion here, before I forget, in the movie Highline, you're hiking with 4 other guys. There's five buddies out there hiking, and we'll talk about the movie a little bit later. But there's a backstory for each of you, and I was really intrigued not only by your story but also by Joe's story. And he started up this backpacking gear company, but I think because of probably some contractual issue, he never revealed what the name of the backpacking gear company was in the film. Are you at liberty to share the name of that backpacking gear company?
Yeah, I would say so. No one's ever told me I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Z-Packs.
Oh, he started up Z-Packs.
Yeah. Joe started up Z-Packs, and Matt was the very first employee, outside family employee, and Will was an employee at the time, and Steve was a customer like myself, who just made connections, and we all just kind of hit it off. So we did a lot of hikes together, and so yeah, it's Z-Packs, and they're based out of Melbourne, Florida.
Yeah, that makes sense now, because as you guys are setting up camp in the film, you guys all have very similar tents, and you just revealed that was a Z-Packs duplex. So if he's got a backpacking gear company, I mean, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And, I kind of stumbled across Z-Packs in 2015 from watching Will Wood's videos. And because Will had a very big YouTube channel at the time. And, he had just through hiked the AT and used Z-Packs gear. And that's how it kind of got on my radar. So I just started, researching and purchasing. And, I guess I was buying just so much gear because all my major gear became Z-Packs gear. Because number one, it was durable. It was handling what I was putting it through. And it was super lightweight and allowing me to go further and be more comfortable on my hikes. And we just kind of hit it off. Me and Matt probably hit it off more than anybody else. But so me and Matt, even today, still go on hikes all over the world together. So that's kind of cool.
Fantastic. All right. Hey, this next section is it's what I call the hiking poll, and it is not POLE, it's POLL, like in a survey. I'm going to ask you 6 questions, maybe more if we get off tangent here, but these 6 questions will help me give you a score on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being completely sane and 1 being absolutely bonkers. So this is the crazy poll here. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Trekking poles or no trekking poles?
Trekking poles just because I need them for my tent. A lot of times I just carry them. Yeah, a lot of times I'm just carrying them, unless I need to cross a stream, then they're extremely handy.
I've asked this question many times already this season, and that's the first time I've gotten that answer.
Yep.
Trekking poles for my tent.
Yep.
Okay.
Because that's how it sets up. It needs poles to set up. It doesn't come with regular tent poles, let's say like an REI tent or something like that. But yeah, that's it. And I've toyed with the idea of just using, because they sell like a tent type pole for that. But just because there's situations where you get in where you're crossing a sketchy stream or something, those trekking poles really help you stay sturdy in those situations. And it's worth carrying them. Plus, it gives my hands something to do, kind of like swinging. Keeps the blood flowing.
That's right. I'm not sure if that answer gives you a 5-point deduction or a 5-point addition. I'm gonna have to think that through a little bit. Okay. Next question: boots or trail runners?
Trail runners.
Trail runners. Do you have a particular brand of trail runners you prefer?
I like Ultra. Ultra seems to be working for me. I've used Brooks in the past. Never tried Hoka. Given that some consideration. I've got a new friend that is a rep for Hoka, so I may go purchase a pair of shoes and just try them out, see what the buzz is. But right now, I'm using the Ultra Olympus 4s.
Olympus 4s, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know that the Lone Peak is a very popular one, but the Olympus.
Yeah, I do have the Lone Peak 5s.
Mm-hmm.
I do have those. Those are great shoes. I use them like as an everyday shoe, or maybe like a travel shoe or something like that. But if I'm on trail, I like the Olympus works pretty good. It has a little extra cushion than the Lone Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I don't like about them is the lugs stick out a little bit. And if you're not very careful, you can like nick your other leg with the tread. And, just like with, John Muir Trail, you got granite dust all over your feet, and that granite like scrapes all the skin off of your ankles and stuff like that whenever the treads hit. So that was an unpleasant experience. Yeah,
I've got a pair of Hokas that I use for running, and I find that I do that while I'm running. I will occasionally graze my calf with the edge of that shoe. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, in the Olympus, they are a very wide base shoe, so they have a very wide footprint, and I guess that's for stability. And I get it, and they are great, like stable shoes. But you've got to be thinking about what's on your feet and make adjustments for that. But otherwise, I mean, the Lone Peak 5s, I really like them. I wear them a lot.
Yeah. Now the Brooks, were those Brooks Cascadias? Still there, Benny?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay. So the Brooks, were they Cascadias?
I started out with the Cascadia 9.
Okay.
I kind of learned that from Will. Will was he was a big advocate for the Cascadia 9. And just like most of these shoe companies, Ultra is in the same boat as that. You have this great shoe that everybody loves it, and then they want to change it. And then it turns to junk, and nobody wants to use it. So that's what happened to the Cascadia. I started using the Cascadia 12 and ended up getting plantar fasciitis from using that shoe. And so I switched from that to the Caldera, the Brooks Caldera, which is a great shoe too. But when I was in Scotland, it's so wet in Scotland that my insole was doing circles around my feet because so much water and floating around. So I just pulled them out and hiked without insoles. And the last 8 miles, I ended up getting shin splints in one of my shins. So that was the last time I ever put a pair of Brooks on my feet. After that, it was all ultra.
Ultra. Yeah. Yeah. I was in a pair of Merrill boots to start off with, and I transitioned from that to a pair of Brooks Cascadia. I'm not sure what number the Cascadias were, but it was kind of a last second purchase. I made a decision. I'm not going in boots again because all I thought about was my feet when I was out there on the trail in boots, and I had a hike coming up, and I just happened to pick out the Cascadias, and they were fantastic. Game changer in terms of how I felt out there on the trail. And now I've kind of migrated over to the ultras.
Yeah, when I started back into backpacking in 2015, I started out in boots. I think I forget even the brand. It's pretty a popular boot that a lot of people use, but I would get hot spots. So then I switched over to the Cascadias, and I would still get hot spots with the Cascadias to the point where afterwards it would end up being a blister or something like that. But once I switched over to the Caldera and the ultras, had no problem. And it's probably because the Caldera and the ultras spread the feet out a little bit more, where those Cascadias, they're kind of tight and they kind of squeeze the feet in on a bit. So I would say that was probably my problem with them.
Okay. Now this next question, I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Tent, tarp, or hammock? Tent.
Definitely a tent. I've had a hammock before. I've got a friend that lives over in South Carolina. He used to own Bonfire Gear, and he made custom hammocks. And they were, the underquilt was sewn in. So that was really neat. You didn't have to worry about like adjusting your underquilt. I think it was rated for like 30 degrees. It was a double layer, so you could still slide in a pad in there if you wanted to.
Nice.
It had a net, sewn into it. It was like a Cadillac of hammocks. I think it weighed like 2 pounds or something like that. That with straps all together. So it was like very low weight. I just can't handle a hammock. I can take a nap in one during the day, but I cannot sleep in one at night. I move around way too much. So when I'm in my tent, I'm able to like row, flip, whatever. But yeah, I like having a tent. I like being able to spread out, and just like with the duplex, you have 2 vestibules. So if something's coming in one door, I could be exiting out the other door. But that makes it nice. Not that anything's ever done that.
Contingency plan. There you go.
Contingency.
Yep. All right. Sleeping bag or quilt?
Sleeping bag, but I use mine as a quilt.
Okay. You open it up and got it.
Yeah, I'll zip it all the way, which the Z-Pack sleeping bags, the zipper's on the bottom. So you sleep on it. So to keep from getting like a cold draft in. So I'll usually just unzip mine, just use it as a quilt. This way I can control the amount of air that comes in. And you get maximum loft whenever you do that. And so a lot of times I find myself, even in the coldest of temperatures, not having to wear that much clothing to stay warm.
Okay. Now plug it in. This is an important question here. This next one is really going to determine where you fall on the scale. So stove, cold soak, or stoveless?
Kind of a mix. Here in the last year or so, I've been using the stove. Prior to that, I cold soak.
Oh.
And even today, depending on the trip and the time of year, I may still cold soak. I do love my coffee in the morning. I've become very addicted to that. But honestly, if it wasn't for the coffee, I'd probably cold soak, because I could technically cold soak all of my meals and wouldn't have no problem doing that. But that coffee, You got to have it.
Now, what is your best go-to cold soak meal?
Well, I mean, oatmeal is so easy. It's like ridiculous. A lot of times, maybe some couscous mixed in with maybe some dehydrated veggies or something like that. I've got I'll use like Evergreen Adventure meals or something of that nature. They're a dehydrated meal that is in compostable packaging. So, all plant-based and all that. I find myself being able to code soak some of those meals. They have like a chili mac that I can code soak, or maybe a lentil stew that code soaks pretty decent. But occasionally, I still like heating up some water and putting it in there and having it, especially if you've been hiking in the cold temperatures. You've been out there for days. Sometimes that warm meal is just enough to get you through, to the next day. So I no longer attempt to cold soak in wintertime. I like to have a stove, and it also works as a safety device. Things go wrong, you'd warm up your hands, you're trying to fight off frostbite, something like that. It's a great, emergency heat source.
Now, unfortunately, Benny, you stumbled across a 4-word combination that's an automatic 10-point deduction, and that was cold soak chili mac. That's quite the combo right there. I apologize.
It's one you have to have a very strong palate.
Okay. Hey, long trails. American long trails all run north to south or south to north, depending on your perspective. Or should they be hiked northbound or southbound?
Whichever direction everybody else isn't going.
Okay. Very good. I like that answer. I like that. That you just made up some points right there.
I don't do crowds too well. And, I always try to strive to leave no impact wherever I go. Whenever I'm camping, I never do a campfire. Unless someone else is doing a campfire, then I'll go enjoy that one. But I'm not going to build one on my own because I don't want to leave that impact. And so a lot of times you don't even know my tent has been setting in where it was setting at. But, I just think we can all do something. And if that means going in the opposite direction, then maybe that will help, because you're not flowing with the flow of traffic. So you have all these groups of people camping in one area and heavily impacting an area. And then you got to think they're all going to the bathroom too. So, and not all of them know how to do that properly. So we're dealing with all that. And then if I'm going the other direction, I can blow by heavily impacted areas and get into an area that's not that impacted, or maybe get off trail enough to where I'm in an area that's not impacted at all, and sit there and camp for the night and move on.
Well, plug it in. I really enjoyed those answers. Let me do some quick math here. Let's see. You got to carry the 3. Gonna divide by 2, multiply by pi. This is one of the highest scores we've had in this. You score an 84. 84. Solid. Pretty sane. Very good. Hey, let's back up a little bit before we get too far down the trail. I'd love to hear where you grew up and how you got involved in hiking.
I grew up in a little bitty town in East Tennessee called Oliver Springs. Really tiny town. It's just kind of on the outskirts of Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge is one of the towns where they helped make components for the atomic bomb way back in the 1940s. Matter of fact, Oak Ridge also has the nickname as a secret city. The town was actually gated off. Anybody who worked at the plants where they made all the materials, they lived inside the city, and no one else was allowed in. And so everything was in there that you would need, like shopping centers, whatever, but they would not let you, you had to go through a guarded gate. Kind of like how A little bit how Los Alamos is right now. How if you take certain roads going into Los Alamos, there's going to be a guard shack there, and there's going to be a guard there to see what you're doing, what you're planning on doing, and stuff like that. That was basically kind of the same thing, except a lot more restricted way back when. But City of Oak Ridge has gone past that now. They do a lot more. The city's grown. They no longer have gates. One or two of the government plants have actually shut down. It's more of a technology thing now. One of the plants have been turned into the plant where they do like the supercomputer, like the world's fastest supercomputer exists there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. They're doing a lot of that technology. And still, like Y12, they still do weaponry and different things of that nature and deal with nuclear stuff. So there's still some component of stuff like that going on there. But outside that, Oak Ridge is just like a normal town that you would drive to. But Oliver Springs is just on the outside of that, right at the very edge of the Cumberland Plateau. The Cumberland Mountains rise up, and a lot of coal mines and stuff like that used to exist. My father was a coal miner, and very few of those actually exist here now.
And were you an only child?
No, I was the oldest child. I had one sibling, and he was born in 73, and I was born he was born in 75. I was born in 73. It was just me and my little brother there growing up.
Mm-hmm. And I know from the film Highline and the story that you shared there that he passed, and you adopted his two daughters.
Yes. Yeah. We adopted his two daughters, and one of them's already grown up and moved out, and the other one, she's 16 and learning how to drive, and we'll be getting her driver's license hopefully on Monday. And so yeah, it's really cool. It's just me and her here. A lot of things in life change, and stuff like that. So I'm no longer married, and it's just me and my daughter here, and she's already graduated. She did the Penn Foster thing, so
oh wow,
she's already graduated, ready to move on into adulthood and all that.
Well, we wish here at the John Freaking Muir Pod, we wish her the best of luck on Monday in her driver's test.
Yes, definitely. I'm tired of chauffeuring.
You're gonna get a little bit of freedom back once she can drive herself.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Now, how did you get involved in thru hiking? How did the idea occur to you? It'd be a good idea to throw everything on your back and be out in the wilderness for days and weeks on end.
Probably watching Will's videos. In 2014, I guess I was binge watching all of his videos and really got that bug back. Obviously, growing up in East Tennessee, you're in a lot of rural areas. I live in a rural area. So you have a lot of access to woods and trails. And so I grew up playing in the woods. I mean, my grandparents lived at the very edge of the Cumberland Plateau, and they had like a line of cliffs that bordered their property. And you could just see out across the East Tennessee Valley all the way over to the Smoky Mountains on a clear day. And so we were always out playing and doing different things. And my high school spring break, I went to a national recreation area called Big South Fork. So I went there to backpack and camp while everybody else went to, probably Panama City or somewhere else to party at the beach. I was doing my woods thing. But I kind of stepped away from that quite a few years, and especially in my early 20s doing first responder stuff like that took up a lot of my time. So I didn't want to be away in case, I needed to respond to something. So once I retired out of all that, I kind of started considering getting back into backpacking, and Will's videos were just like bringing me, like sucking me into that zone again. So I started just section hiking on the AT, little sections here and there, 3-day 4 days, something like that. Sometimes just a 2-day. And slowly I could feel a little bit at peace, because at that point I was beginning to struggle with my PTS.
Yeah.
And deal with all that. And I was getting just a little bit of peace every time I would go out. And it would last for a few days, afterwards. And then I would be right back to all like amped up, struggling with all that. And then the longer I would go, the longer that would last. So I really didn't get the full benefit until I started doing those 900 milers, because I treated those 900 milers like I was through hiking. The first one, not so much, because I was still, the first FKT, I was still working 3 days a week. So that kind of gives you an idea.
Sure.
I was working 3 days a week, and I still was able to put down some decent record. But the second one, I did stay, I did camp every night. I did come home. So I didn't do zeros, obviously, but I would go into town, resupply, and come back out, maybe take a shower at a friend's house and get back in the woods. But that's where I really started getting good benefit from being out. And then after that, I started doing through hikes. I started out doing like the Art Lobe, something really simple, a little 30 miler. So I did Art Lobe, did Foothills Trail. So Foothills about 73, 76, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I started baby stepping myself up. And, next thing you know, you're doing, the long trail. I'm doing the bent kite. So we're punching into close to 300s. And then the summer that we did Highline, I started out doing the long trail, came home, repacked, did the JMT, didn't get to come home, stayed out there, stayed in Vegas for a day or two, and then went on into Salt Lake and then met up with the rest of the guys. So that was a long stretch of being away from work, number one, but also being away from family, which was a struggle. You don't like being away from your family that long. You enjoy getting out there, and you enjoy getting away from the craziness that family brings. But when you're out there, you crave to be with family.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's that constant struggle. It's like you want the peace, but you also want the family.
Yep.
So that's
totally get that.
A struggle. Yeah.
Yep. Now you mentioned a couple things there, and also in Highline they really go into some of your background. So I hope it's okay if I share some of your background with our listeners here. So
yeah, I am very open with my story.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned PTS. It's not PTSD in your mind. It's PTS. It's post-traumatic stress. There's no disorder. Excuse me. And that really kind of came about because you were your career was you were an EMT and involved in water rescue, and you, over the course of your career, you saw some pretty horrific things.
Yeah, I was an EMT for quite a few years, and volunteered with the local fire department, with a local rescue squad, and worked with a local ambulance service as an EMT. I taught vehicle extrication, so I taught other departments how to use the jaws of life. I also taught swiftwater rescue with the state of Tennessee, so I taught other rescuers how to read the water and how to make that decision of whether you go in and attempt to save this person or you don't. There's a risk benefit thing that we always weigh whenever we're in rescue. Obviously, the benefit has to outweigh the risk, and if it's the other way around, then it's a no-go. And sometimes that's really hard, unless you can lay eyes on somebody and that you can save them and stuff like that. And obviously, as rescuers, we do everything that we possibly can. We're not just going to walk away and say, it's too bad. We figure out a way to do it safely. So it may take us a minute to figure out a better way to guarantee that everybody goes home. But yeah, doing doing the extrications, we have I-40 that runs right through our county, so we have a lot of vehicle accidents. A lot of times they're very, very horrific, accidents. They can get pretty gnarly. I was also a rescue diver, so I headed our water rescue team here in our county, and so we would recover, drowning victims, or maybe even just stolen property for the sheriff's department. We would do that stuff too. But unfortunately, in those areas, you see a lot of stuff, and the old adage, "Once seen can't be unseen," is very true. And those things make a mark. And post-traumatic stress, PTS, definitely is not a disorder by no means. It's actually an injury to the brain. It's like you're experiencing something so traumatic, so like not normal, that your brain is scarred from it. Your brain, it's almost like it glitches. Yeah, if I was to explain it, and kind of like how I explained in the documentary, I believe that in those situations that the brain will actually cut out sections of time. Cut out, let's say, a traumatic incident. It's going to cut that out, and it's going to set that over here so you can function normal. Anytime you deal with trauma, you hear of the whole thing of shock. That whole shocks section, I believe, is where the brain is actively taking pieces, figuring out what it needs to delete or put in archive so that you can function normal.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to be dwelling on this.
It's a defense mechanism, survival skill. Yeah,
exactly. So as it's clipping, pieces of memory out, sometimes it pulls a little bit more than what it needs, and that gets really aggravating whenever it does that. So, because there's a lot of things you forget, you forget different aspects of life, things that occurred or whatever that were good things. And so I find myself, not being able to remember, a lot of different things in certain time periods that makes it kind of tough. And then all of a sudden I may have something may happen and trigger a memory, and the brain allows this little piece to come back and put in place. But like I said in the film, I'm cleaning off my desk when I'm out there, hiking. I'm going through all these images and trying to make sense of it, maybe pray about it, and maybe just try to just figure out, or maybe just come to peace with, okay, I did everything I could do in that situation.
Yeah.
I couldn't have gotten there any quicker. I couldn't have done anything to change the outcome of that or whatever. And then I'm able to put that back in the file where it goes, and eventually the pile on my desk will go away. But, until then, I'm going to be cleaning off my desk.
Yep. And I think you also used a phrase saying that you were softened by the trail. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it, that I think a lot of folks start off on the trail with a lot of rough edges, and the trail has this fantastic ability to soften those edges and kind of restore a bit of sanity.
Yeah, I think it humbles you really good. You understand that you aren't in control out there, that the least little thing can kill you. It's that easy. And so you have to be aware of that, and you have to be, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but you almost have to be willing to just accept the fact that you aren't in control, and you're at the mercy of your creator, and hoping that you're on good terms. Because a lot of nasty things can happen out there. Like in Scotland, people die in peat bogs, all the time, or out west, people fall off cliffs, and or like here, people drown, that were good swimmers. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just that whenever you're in the outdoors, anything is like capable of like taking you out.
That's an interesting perspective. That's an interesting way to put it, that you're not in control. I think others might argue that when they're in city life and the phone is ringing and they've got appointments and they've got meetings and they've got everything else, that it's difficult to feel in control in that reality, and that they feel like they have more control over themselves, of their decisions, of when they're starting and stopping and what they're doing when they're out there on the trail.
Yeah, they may be able to, say, okay, I'm starting then, I'm ending then.
Mm-hmm.
But you twist a knee, break a leg, whatever, you're stopping whenever that occurs. You're not going any further. Or if it starts hailing softball size hail, you're not going any further. Hopefully you don't get a concussion. So it's just stuff like that. It's like you're in control of your peace, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be one that, someone could like dig into a little bit deeper, but that would be about the only control I could see. I like to think I'm in control because I'll say like, okay, I'm going to here, we're going to do good, or I'm going to stop here and I'm going to fish this and then I'm going to go. At the end of the day, you end up wherever you end up, because half the time I'll get to where I want to go and it's like, I think I can push for a little bit more.
Right.
Get a little insurance, for the trip.
Yep.
And so push a little bit forward. That's less I have to do later. And so if I want to do a 0 or Nero or just do a late start, I can do that. I have that built in at that point. I like calling that insurance. So it gives me wiggle room.
Very appropriate. That's a fair point, that you may have starting and stopping times in mind, but all it takes is one misstep or softball size hail. So good.
Just like when I was on the JMT, just before we did Highline, I had plantar fasciitis still. So I'm stepping off of a step and I'm wearing my calderas, and they got that really soft patch on the heel, like super, super soft.
Mm-hmm.
And I step on a piece of granite that's pointed up, and it hits right on, I guess, a cyst that had grown around a nerve from the plantar fasciitis, and it broke it. And I immediately fell to the ground, got nauseous. It hurt so bad. And I have a very high pain tolerance. I mean, I've got all these tattoos. I have a very high pain tolerance. Not an issue. But I was at a point to where I was almost ready to throw up.
Oh.
And I sat there and I realized I'm 100 miles from nowhere. I'm like, I'm going to have to walk out here. I have no like GPS, Garmin thing. I don't have nothing. I'm going to have to like walk my happy butt out of this situation. And I sat there for a little bit and then got up, started walking, limping. But gradually, by the end of the day, my foot never hurt again. It was done.
Wow, you just toughed it out.
Yeah. It stopped hurting. It never hurt again. That scar tissue spread away off that nerve, so that nerve is no longer being pinched. And the scar tissue was out of the way where it's not putting pressure on anything else. So it worked out really good. I ended up going and getting therapy later to kind of deal with some of that scar tissue to break that up. But yeah, that was a close point to where my hike could have been done.
Yeah. Yep. Out of your control.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hear some more stories from the trail and hear about some other things that Plug It In is involved with. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. The John freaking Muir Pod is sponsored by Outdoor Vitals, the ultralight backpacking gear company whose mission is to improve the mental, physical, and emotional health of mankind by facilitating impactful outdoor experiences. Outdoor Vitals creates innovative technical products with confidence-inspiring education that empower outdoor ultralight adventurers. Their focus on performance enables you to live ultralight with gear you can actually be confident with. Whether you're looking for an ultralight sleep system, shelter, or pack, or if you're looking for top quality apparel for the trail, you can find it at Outdoor Vitals. Do yourself a favor. Live ultra light. And welcome back. We were talking to Benny Braden Jr., also known as Plug It In or just Plug, and heard a little bit there about some of his experiences on the trail and a little bit about the movie Highline. Let's talk about one of our favorite trails on the podcast, and that is the John Muir Trail. And I know that you've done it twice. Did it in 2018 and 2021. I actually did the southern half of the JMT this past summer. So I'm curious as to what were the dates that you were on the trail this last year.
This past year, I was there from August 19th or 16th all the way through like September 5th.
Okay.
Matter of fact, whenever we left Yosemite, we were on the last Yards bus of the year to Mammoth.
Okay. So you went after me. I was on the trail. We dropped in at Midway Point, Muir Trail Ranch. I think it was probably July 28th, and then finished up 7 days later on top of Whitney. Nice. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Now,
yeah, I like the John Muir Trail. It's, you know, I don't think there's a more beautiful place other than, you know, in the Uintas. I think both of those look very similar.
Yes, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
In some ways they're different. In some ways they're very much alike. And so I get a lot of peace being in the Sierra. It's almost like holy ground almost, if you could say. There's just something about them that is a different, you know, we don't have mountains like that here in the East, you know, number one, nothing nowhere near that tall, or they don't even look the same. And just being able to be out there and be in different terrain, be on the trail that, you know, has such history. I think that's it's just really cool to be out there to know that I'm hiking on the same trail that so many others, you know, have hiked.
Right. And I probably have a seventh question I should add to the hiking poll, and that is it better above the tree line or below the tree line? Because being a Tennessee boy, I mean, you've got a lot of trees out your way, and there is a lot of beautiful property on the JMT that is above the tree line.
Above tree line, hands down. Yeah,
I thought you'd say that.
Yeah, I get enough trees here. You know, I don't need any more trees. Whenever I get out there, unless they're big redwoods, you know, then I'm all about, you know, those big, beautiful redwoods. But yeah, just something about being above tree line is, especially in the Sierra, there's nothing else like it. Agreed.
Do you have a favorite memory or story or even campsite from the JMT?
I have this last time. We stealth camped off the side of Cloud's Rest, and we had a spectacular view. Was able to get some great night shots from it, from that same spot, and some great sunset shots. So yeah, it worked out really good. And actually, Will Wood had a video of where he camped, so I was kind of looking for it. Found it, wasn't really that impressed with it, and just kept looking and found a different spot. You can see where a lot of people camp in different spots. But I talked to a ranger earlier the next morning and say, hey, I don't know if it's okay, but I was here. And they were like, no, it's definitely okay. We want to see people disperse. This way there's less of an impact on a single area. And so that was encouraging to hear a park say that, because parks don't have that mentality here in the East. They want everybody in one spot, and those spots are just, you know, just horrifically like impacted.
Right. Now, before you summited Whitney in 2018 and 2021. Where did you camp the night before?
Guitar Lake.
Okay.
I did Guitar Lake on both.
Okay. I have a tip for you. I have a tip for you if you're going to be on the JMT this year. And there is an old timer told me about this a couple of trips back. And he said, the primo spot that a lot of people don't know about, there is where the sign is that says Mount Whitney, 1.9 miles.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of up by Trail Crest.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sign up there. Right below that sign, just above the trail, there's a spot there for six or eight campers.
Yep.
And
I've seen that spot.
Yeah, there's no water up there. You got to bring your own water up, but the view is spectacular. Yeah. It is spectacular. And the last couple of times I've done this, I have camped there and I've gotten up there in the late afternoon, set up camp, and then head up to Whitney for a sunset summit. And it basically, I'm the only guy up there, and it is just gorgeous.
That is amazing. I typically hit Whitney for a sunrise, like a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of my most memorable ones was, I would say, whenever I did the High Sierra Trail in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We were up there doing our normal stuff, that morning, and someone had said, "Hey, look, there's a shadow." And I turned and looked back, west, and you could see the shadow of Mount Whitney that the sun was like making, because you have all the haze and fog and all that.
Right.
Different stuff in the air to kind of like where you can see shadow against the sky. And so I was able to catch, with my camera, the shadow of Mount Whitney. So that was really cool. And also on that trip, we had a full moon, and we never used our headlamps the first time as we were climbing up Mount Whitney. So that was really neat, with everything being granite and the light reflecting off all that white rock. It really made for a neat, unique summit. So that was probably my favorite summit. I've summited Whitney 3 times, and that was by far my favorite.
Nice. I mean, there's something about when you're hiking with a headlamp, you're in a bubble of light, and you're because of your eyes and the headlamp, you're just seeing, what the headlight is illuminating. And I have to imagine that with a full moon and no headlamp, you had to see a whole lot more. That had to be a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it definitely opened it up. Obviously, your eyes get used to that. And I try not to use my headlamp too much anyways. But it was really neat, being able to climb Whitney and look down at Hitchcock and, look back at Guitar and just still be able to see those things, because of the full moon and all that. So that was really neat. And, man, you're talking about a magical moment. That was really cool.
Yeah. Now, have you, on the High Sierra Trail, you hiked that in 2020?
Yes. In 2020, actually, we hiked it. We were there just days after the Whitney earthquake. Oh,
wow.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Because they had, we were trying to communicate with Forest Service, because they emailed us our permit, but we were trying to see, because we were exiting Whitney Portal, we had someone coming and picking us up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we weren't sure if we were going to if we could even get down the mountain, or if once we were down there, if we can even go down the road, if the road was missing or whatever. We had no idea what the destruction was. But fortunately, by the time we got there, they had it open back up. And I never want to do those switchbacks ever again in my whole life. I'm done.
Yes. Now, so you finished at Whitney. Did you start at Crescent Meadow?
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And that's about, 71, 75 miles, something along those lines?
Something like that. I wish they would figure that out. That's, I hate being on a trail where they don't know the actual mileage of the trail. It's like, come on, somebody's got to know this. And there's got to be, especially with an official site or something like that, somebody really has to do some math. Let's figure out what these miles are, because those are important.
That's right. That's right. Details. Let's get the details right.
That's it.
Now, some friends and I, we hiked, we did an out and back. So we hiked some of the High Sierra Trail a few years back. We went from Crescent Meadow out to Precipice Lake, which is just above Hamilton Lakes. and then back again. So I'm planning this summer. I already have a permit. It's the end of June, which is going to be interesting to see what the snow conditions are at the end of June. But gonna hike the whole thing, finish up at Whitney and get picked up at Whitney Portal. Although I've gone on this podcast before and said that my least favorite section of any trail on the planet is from the top of Whitney down to Whitney Portal. That is not an enjoyable trail. Even going downhill. I mean, it's not any fun at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's trails in the Smokies that are extremely difficult, and I had to do them a couple of times just so I could do the 900 miler. That I'd never want to do those trails again. I mean, they're like that bad. I hate them. But that Whitney Trail, I would rather have a kidney stone. Because anything but making me go down that again.
That's a strong statement. That's a strong statement. Rather have a kidney stone.
Rather have a kidney stone.
Folks, that's how bad that is. Yes.
Quote me on it. Put it down.
Now plug it in. You've been all over the place. The Smokies, the Sierras, Scotland, Turkey, the Uintas. Have you ever experienced a moment where you said, what in the heck am I doing out here? This was not a good decision. This is not safe, or any kind of holy cow moments out there?
The last time I did the TGO over in Scotland, the Great Outdoor Challenge, it's where you make your own route. So some areas that you're going, there's no trail, and there hasn't been a trail there in like forever. So you're in the middle of the highlands, going through peat bogs, scaling up sides of mountains that look like they're ready to crumble. And we were dropping down. We went over one of those spots and came down, and I had thrown my trekking poles off, and I was thinking, man, this is so sketchy. This isn't going to be good. But we end up, everything was okay. But when it comes to the worst spot was on the long trail. Going up over Mansfield, it was raining, it was storming, rain was blowing in sideways. And to climb Mansfield, whenever you're doing the long trail, you have to go up some ladders, you have to jump some rock crevices. And with everything being slick and wet, that made it even worse. And this girl from Montreal, we ended up connecting with her. Me, Matt, and Will were doing a long trail, so she's hiking with us. And one spot that Matt had to grab her, she almost was fall. I mean, in this rock crevice, we can see the tops of trees are level with us. That's how deep and long this is. So we get up on Summit Mansfield, and it's this crazy, crazy weather. And we gotta descend. We gotta get off this thing, and it is dang near vertical, and it's wet. And once again, you're in a spot where you just throw your trekking poles off, and try to figure out how to wedge your way in between these two rocks to scramble down this crevice to get down to where the trail continues. And that was so bad that was sketchy. And then, of course, on the side of Lighty Peak, when we were doing Highline.
Yes.
And all of us are up there. And I see these clouds and I'm eyeballing because I'm used to being in the Sierra and watching those things just pop up. But I can see these, and I can see that they're getting bigger and they're getting closer. And I kept telling a few of them, was we need to be moving. This thing's getting ready to get serious. And I hadn't said that 2 minutes. And a big, huge crack of thunder. So Will and a bunch of others ran down the hill, get in the tree line. And me, Matt, and Joe stood there on the side of Lighty Peak in the middle of this lightning storm. And Joe looks at us and says, well, I guess we just keep moving forward. There's no storm going on. showing no emotions, like nothing unusual is going on this hike.
Joe's pretty matter of fact, isn't he?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, Joe's worth a lot more than I am. And if something happens and he comes up missing, somebody's going to look for him. So I need to be where he's at.
Smart man.
Find me. Yeah. It's all about association. So we're hiking along there and it's getting so hairy. I mean, the hair on my arms were sticking up. That's how much static was in the air. And I could just feel it in my beard too. And so I whipped out my GoPro and turned it on and whipped it around. By the time I whipped it around was whenever we had that one lightning shot that looked like it struck me in the skull.
Yes.
I was convinced I was going to die. I mean, you could not have told me any different. And I was at peace, but it was definitely an intense moment.
Yeah, I remember that very vividly from the film. It looked pretty sketchy, and that bolt of lightning, that was no joke.
Yeah, and then there were other bolts that were like striking 50 yards away from us and stuff. And when lightning gets that close, it makes a funny little sound because you're actually hearing the actual click of the spark. So you'll hear like or something of that, something similar to that, whatever the strike is, like a little click, and then you'll hear the boom, the expansion of the air that's being heated by the lightning. But you don't want to hear clicking noises. That's not like, it's way too close.
That's not good. We had a guest on earlier this year who talked about his time in the JMT this past summer, and he got stuck in a lightning storm, and he pitched his tent and then decided he did not want to be too close to the tree. And so he actually took his bear canister about 50 yards away and sat on it out in the middle of nowhere. And a lightning strike hit the tree about 50 yards away from him. And he said that he couldn't hear for about 10, 15 minutes afterwards. His ears were just ringing, and he couldn't feel his hands. They were numb for a good half hour.
Probably from the static electricity something.
Yeah. And then, yeah. And some poor guy was killed at Muir Trail Ranch this summer. Yeah. I don't know if you heard about that or not, but struck by lightning.
Yeah. Yeah. The number one killer on the JMT. Yeah. The number one killer on the JMT is lightning, hands down. And people I take it seriously whenever I was out there, anytime I'm out there, if I see lightning or hear thunder, I don't play with it. I find me a spot, set my tent up, get in it. I don't waste any time.
Yeah. We had the great experience of going over Forester. In the last half mile up to the top, that's when the thunder and the lightning rolled in, and we're at 13,200 feet with metal poles in our hands, wondering, hey, how do we get down quick?
Yeah. It's that was kind of like Jay Peak. Whenever me and Matt did the long trail, we were up on Jay Peak, and storm was coming. You could hear it. The wind and rain was going. They were sideways. It was insane. And Jay Peak is kind of like an old ski resort, or actually a ski resort, but in the summertime there's no snow. So we're hiking. We go to get off this mountain. We've done our pictures. We're trying to go down this ski chute to get back onto the trail. And it is so crazy that the clouds that are blowing up the mountain look like they're cars driving down the road 50 something miles an hour. And Matt is here, and these are like flying by so quick. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen. I think I got it on video somewhere, but that was intense, without doubt.
Crazy. Now let's talk a little bit about the movie Highline. We alluded to it a little bit earlier. 5 friends out on the trail. The movie is set up great. It's almost 2 hours, and they do a fantastic job of taking some time for each of the 5 of you and going through your backstory and kind of how you met, And it also spins it spins a great story out there on the trail with the five of you and how that all unfolds. How did you guys meet Chris Smead of Outmersive Films, and how did this movie get put together?
Matt and Chris had a friendship. They were already like talking, and they had been talking about doing some kind of video together or something for Z-Packs and things of that nature. And it began as being like, maybe, if I remember the story right, it might have been like a 15-minute like thing. And then it turned into this, and then turned into this, and then they wanted to do this. And whenever they decided to actually make a full-length documentary out of it, Matt reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this and sharing your story?" And I was like, "Sure." I've never done anything like that before, and it's a great opportunity to share, my personal story that might help someone through their PTS struggle. Because first responders struggle with PTS more than, let's say, military members. And not saying that what they experience is like any less. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, it's a different breed of trauma.
Right.
Even though we experience very similar trauma, we just, first responders do have people shooting at us. We do deal with that, unfortunately, depending on where you live and things of that nature. But what's different from first responders in our military members is that they're typically on foreign soil. They're in another country where we are in our own neighborhoods. We're responding to calls that with people we grew up with, maybe family members, and we're having to do our jobs and maintain our wits while we take care of them and not like lose it because someone that we care about is in a really bad condition or something. So, and you do this, and it's not like, okay, you go into battle and you're dealing with this, and then you're back at base. Depending on where you're stationed at here as a first responder, you could see death every day. You'll see trauma every day. So it doesn't matter whether you're a law enforcement, firefighter, EMS, any of those, rescue, there's a good chance you're going to see something horrific just, at any minute. Just like the other day, 2 days ago, there was a car wreck just right down the road from me that rode on its top and caught fire, and the people inside died. If I had still been doing this kind of work, I would have been running that call and those other calls that nightmares are created.
Yeah. And
so first responders, they deal with something more called CPTS. It's, I think they call it compound post-traumatic stress, where you're experiencing trauma over and over and over and over. And you don't have a chance to kind of like heal from it. It's like you get back to the base, to the station, and you're having to clean the equipment, and you're having to get right back up there and run another one. And depending on how the craziness is going in the world, in your neighborhood, you may be going like all night long. I've done calls where I've ran fires where there were fatalities, and then run autopsy runs, take those the bodies to Nashville for an autopsy as part of the rescue squad, and be going like all this time, all those hours, and get back, and then having to go do a shift at the EMS. And so it never would, like, there's no breaks. It's endless.
Right.
So I just tell folks that, just kind of be aware of that with first responders, that it's, depending on where you're stationed, it can be rough. That's why a lot of those folks don't, that's why there's a high turnover. I only made it like 13, 14, 15 years in the field before I said, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Well, Chris Smead does a wonderful job with Highline in sharing your story and sharing your backstory, as well as the stories of the other guys. And if you're listening right now and you have not seen Highline, you need to pause the podcast right now, find Highline. I think I watched it on YouTube for a minimal cost, and it is well worth I think the $4 or $5 that you pay to see it. It is a really well done movie that is just an impressive job by the five of you and by Chris. So congratulations on that.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate it. I got the chance to take some pictures on that trip. And so they used a lot of my photos and animated them. So that was really neat. You know, Gordy had the issue of,
that's right,
had the bell, and he was doing all the still shots mostly. So whenever he left, they turned around and handed me the camera and said, okay, you're it. Which was fine, but I never used a full frame camera at that point. And so I had a learning curve. And, but man, what some incredible shots we got from that trip. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, every scene of the movie was just breathtaking. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now plug it in. You're involved in some different organizations, one of which really ties into what you were just talking about, Reboot Recovery.
Yeah, Reboot Recovery is a nonprofit based out of Middle Tennessee, and they focus on assisting military members, first responders, and their families. And now they have courses for just anybody, because we all experience trauma, whether it's divorce or family death or family pet. We're all experiencing trauma at some way, so they're helping even those people now too. But they have over 200 locations nationwide, and they just help people understand the kind of trauma that you're dealing with and how to control your responses to that trauma, and help you understand that your role in that and how you can heal from that. I know it's been very vital for my success. I mean, I'm 850 something days PTS episode free at this point.
Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And it's not been all easy at times. There's been some very intense times where I came very, very close to going into an episode, but I was able to use what I learned from the course and apply that. And actually, I've gone through the course 9 times, maybe 10 times. And I'm also a course leader. I'm not active right now. I don't lead a course. But yeah, and why I suggest people go through the course so much is, and they allow you to do so. Let's say you go through the first course, and we're going through the first lesson, and we're on the first page, and we're going over something, and something strikes a chord with you. It hits. It's like, this is me. And all of a sudden, the room just went, and you're zoned in on this one line, or maybe this one paragraph in this book. We've already moved on to like the last page. You're still on the first page.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go home, and then, the next lesson the following week, you pick back up, and, you make it as far as you can in that one. And the same thing occurs. So next time you go and do the course, let's say you complete it, you come back and do it a second time. You make it a little bit further in that first lesson. And you're thinking, did we even talk about this the first time? Because you weren't there.
Right.
You were still back on page 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that occurred to me so many times. And even whenever I was doing like my 9th or 8th lesson, course, I was still having moments. It's like, did we really go over this? Is this new material? is this a revamped version? So I suggest everybody, once you start doing it, just keep going, because you're also creating community. You're also becoming a part of a community. Other first responders or other veterans, they were struggling with this, with PTS, and you have to lean on each other sometimes on some rough days, and they're going to get you through it because they understand what you're going through. For someone that hasn't ever experienced the things that first responders experience or military members, it's really tough to say, I understand, because you don't.
Right.
There's no way your mind can go in that spot to understand that, this is, the things that you've seen, or things that you've had to do, would give, most people nightmares. And so it's just one of those things that Reboot has been just that missing piece to my puzzle. And thanks to them, I'm still standing here today. And my hiking does help. My hiking helps a lot and all that. But definitely the Reboot Recovery is definitely a lifesaver.
Yeah, some things are meant to be solitary pursuits, like a magical moment on the way up to Mount Whitney in the moonlight, and other things are not meant to be solitary pursuits, like healing from trauma. And so, if you're in a group, you're going to be better off going through that process. Yeah. Yep. Hey, tell us a little bit about Save Our Smokies, another organization you're involved with.
Yes, Save Our Smokies. A good friend of mine, Jerry Willis, and his wife, Darlene, actually founded Save Our Smokies. I connected with them a few weeks later after they made the decision to form a Facebook group. And so we did our first cleanup. We did it together. And me and Jerry did it there in the Smokies. And so Jerry is our president. I'm the vice president of Save Our Smokies. And we go in and we help the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, along with other surrounding areas like the U.S. Forest Service over at Max Patch and other areas. But we remove litter from roadsides, parking lots, pull-offs, things like that in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And we do multiple events during the month. We have different leaders leading different events. And so that me and Jerry doesn't have to be everywhere, all the time. It's crazy how much time those things take. But last year we removed 10,133 pounds of litter from the roadsides just inside the Great Smoky Mountain National Park.
Wow.
And we didn't cover all the roads. That doesn't count all the roads. We had to go back to many locations and redo them over and over and over because they were such high impact. And there's limited trash cans inside the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So a lot of people just throw the trash down on the ground. And so we're having to go and fetch that. And there's a lot of trash that's been on the ground for decades. That's been there so old, that's like the original old beer pull tab kind of cans. They've been there a long time. And we have the philosophy that if it's not natural, we're going to remove it. And we're going to do whatever it takes to do so. So we go down embankments and do things like that. But yeah, that kind of began in 2020 in November. Whenever I connected with them, like the first week of November, they actually made the decision to form the Facebook group on October 17th. So I connected with them just 2 weeks later. But until then, that September through that November, I was going to Max Patch over in the Pisgah National Forest and removing a truckload of trash and abandoned camping equipment once a week. And that was tiring because that is 2 and something miles, or it's like 2 hours and something from my house. So I'm having to drive, to North Carolina once a week to pick up after college kids, basically. So I did this for several months. And that's actually where responsible stewardship was birthed. And that's the organization I founded. And that's where it all kind of came. That's actually what changed my whole mentality of how I use social media. By physically laying my eyes on what was being done to our public lands, like Max Patch, I started reevaluating me. What was I doing to contribute? You know, I was doing all the typical stuff that, you know, influencers do. I'm like, I'm sponsored. I've got all this gear stuff. I'm taking pictures, show me, you know, doing different things with gear, geotagging every place that I went to, you know, doing all my YouTube videos. And I was doing everything that, you know, a typical, you know, someone would do, kind of like in an influencer type role. And I never once thought about my impact, ever. It wasn't even on my radar. And,
right.
You know, where I'd gone to Turkey and hiked in Turkey, 90 miles along the Black Sea, you have all this trash floating up and all this trash on the shoreline. That was there. This wasn't here. But when I went to Max Patch and I seen piles of trash and camping equipment just like strewn out everywhere, TP all over the place, filming products, beer cans, alcohol containers, you know, AT posts broken down to burn, or fence posts and railings being burned, or new tree saplings cut to burn. It was like something I'd never seen. I related to it being like a traumatizing event, and how it just shakes you to the core, and it makes your brain just, you know, it's almost like, you know, you hear the old record albums, people run that needle across it, you know, you hear that sound bite of, that's almost like what I heard at that point. It's like, what? And
all the 20-year-olds listening right now, they have no idea what we're talking about there, but
yeah, exactly.
Record. What's a record?
Good old vinyl. Hey, it's coming back. Vinyl's coming back. But yeah, it changed my whole mentality of how I treat public lands.
Yeah.
So at that point, I became an advocate for public lands. I no longer was exploiting public lands. I became an advocate. So I switched my role. And so I just started like trying to just focus on, what am I doing? Focused on me first. Okay, what have I done to contribute to this? How many people did I lure to Max Patch or to the Smokies or wherever I went? So I started going back through and I realized, okay, there's things I can do. I can put a stewardship message in my post. I can start advocating for public lands. I can start researching geotagging, what kind of negative effects that's having on, you know, our public lands. So long story short, in that whole process of building Save Our Smokies is what it is today. You know, I put my little like signatures here and there, like inside the Save Our Smokies logo, it says responsible stewardship. And so that's my little signature of, you know, whenever we design the logo, and just different things that we do, and stuff like that. So I made the decision late last year, like in December, to turn responsible stewardship into a nonprofit.
Nice.
I realized that there's more things that we can do if we're a nonprofit. So January 1, I filed, sent my paperwork, my attorney, all that. So we are waiting on our EIN number as I speak. And, but yeah, we're out there. We have our website up, responsiblestewardship.org. And we have a Amazon wish list that people can go on there and they can buy things on our behalf, and it's shipped right to us. Usually things like grabbers and trash bags, things like that, what we have on the list at that time. But we also made a thing of ethics. You know, how Leave No Trace has their principles, or Recreate Responsibly has their guidelines. You know, we have our ethics. And since responsible stewardship is more moral based, we felt like ethics was a better word for that, you know, for those guidelines. And basically, the ethics are, we want you to first know your impact. Know your own personal impact you're placing on this location, whether it be physically or digitally, either one. Are you hiking on the actual trail, or are you using a user-made trail? Whenever you tag that place, are you thinking about what's best for this location, or are you thinking about likes and follows?
Right.
And then we also want you to educate. We want you to educate others, but we want you to do it through your action. So what better way to teach someone how to be a good steward, but show them how to be a good steward. Show them, you do it first and let them follow, or empower them to inspire more people to follow. And on top of that, you're advocating. Advocate for public lands, for the betterment treatment of public lands. Use your social media. Everybody has a voice. Everybody uses it on social media all the time. Use it for good. There's a hashtag out there called influence for good.
Mm-hmm.
Influence for good. Stand up for public lands. If you see someone not treating public lands right, stand up for public lands and encourage them to change, encourage them to do different, and not, be negative. One of the things about responsible stewardship, we try to avoid any negative wording or anything of that nature. We want positive reinforcement, positive influence, as you could say. But also one of the ethics is donate. Donate to organizations that are caring for those lands.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I go to hike a trail, I join the conservancy or whatever that is over that trail. I also donate to an organization that is maintaining that trail, because I'm placing a small impact on that trail when my feet are on it.
Right.
Whether we like that or not, that's the simple fact. We're helping to wash that out by donating, so they can go in and they can do maintenance projects that maybe they weren't able to do before. But then one of our most important ethics is also tag lightly. Tag lightly. Whenever we were out in California, you've probably seen it out there. See those little bitty paper signs that they'll have outside of ranger stations? And some of them are kind of long with a lot of writing.
Yep.
Did you ever read any of those? Most of them were written by rangers, and they were telling people to tag lightly. They're actually saying it, tag lightly, and don't be a problem visitor. Those were actual words they were using, and you would never hear language like that on the East Coast. Especially in the Smokies. We don't want to do anything. It seemed like park management don't want to do anything to offend anybody or send anybody away. No citations, anything like that. But out west, they were like, "Hey, don't be a problem visitor. Do what you're supposed to do with your food, because it causes problem for the next guy."
Right.
And so tag lightly, don't geotag. If you're doing geotags, if you feel like you have to do it, use a broad one. Use the state, like California or Utah or Tennessee or North Carolina.
Right.
Don't use a specific tiny spot, because you're zeroing in the GPS location that everybody and their grandmother is going to be there. And not everybody treats public lands the same.
That's right.
And that's the sad fact.
Yeah.
And I associate it like this. Geotagging makes as much sense as you geotagging your house, opening your door and leaving. You would never do that.
Nope. Absolutely not.
Why are we doing it to our public lands?
Fair point. Fair point.
Point.
And
then our last ethic,
go ahead.
I'll wrap this up, is just together. Foster stewardship together. We want to see you out there fostering stewardship with that together, encouraging others to join you, making not only our public lands, but our communities more inviting for everybody to enjoy responsibly. It's completely inclusive. There's nothing about stewardship that anyone can't do. Even if you're wheelchair bound or handicapped, you can still use social media to advocate for public lands, to share important information, maybe help educate the next generation that's coming up in the outdoor, so they know how to act and how to treat the outdoors. Sorry, that was a bunch of stuff, but
that's okay. It's all good stuff. And as a user of those public lands, I want to thank you for your advocacy.
Yes, thank you. I'm just trying to do my part and maybe encourage a few other people to join me. But we're quickly going nationwide. We're getting stewardship partners every day, local businesses or backpacking companies, Hilltop Packs, Nashville Packs, Z Packs, Keep Virginia Cozy, Evergreen Adventure Foods,
nice,
Route Foods. A bunch of organizations all across are saying, okay, no, we want to take care of public lands and we want to make it a priority to do that. And they're actually, many of those are arranging cleanups out there and picking stuff up. Others are donating money, like Z-Packs. They donate like $200,000 or more every year to public lands, to organizations that care for different trails and different things like that. And then you have organizations like Keep Virginia Cozy that are out there removing 10,000 pounds of trash a year.
Wow.
It's insane what some of these organizations are out there doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Hey, Benny, you know where we are?
Where?
We are at that time of the episode where I ask you for your pro tip insight of the week. What piece of trail wisdom can you share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better?
I think the best pro tip I can give would be, kind of falls into my wheel well right now. And that's just simply, when you're out there, be a good steward to the trail. Be a good steward to the land and to everyone around you. Don't be playing a Bluetooth out loud, Bluetooth speaker, because maybe the people around you don't want to hear that music, or maybe they went out there to hear the birds and the crickets and all that instead. So just kind of think about those people around you. Don't try to push your experience on someone else. And also, if you see trash, pick it up. Even the micro trash. You'd be surprised. On the JMT, I had so much micro trash that I picked up along the trail. It was insane. Like, my food bag was being almost more full of micro trash than it was anything else. We even seen some spots where people were using a bathroom next to a lake right on the bank. So, we try to remove everything of that we could, because that's going to contaminate other hikers behind us and make people deathly sick. So when you see something, do something. Don't wait on the park staff. Most of these parks are underfunded and understaffed and may never even be able to get to that. Help them out and just do something to help these parks. And, maybe encourage other people to do it with you. And just, better yet, my best pro tip, I know I have a bunch. I should have warned you, I kind of have this old man syndrome where I just start like rambling on. And, but my best pro tip is, it's getting worse. I'm like 49 years old and I'm just on the edge of it. But my best pro tip is, when you see something like trash or a doggy bag or vandalism, take a picture of it and share it on social media. And at the same time, show what you're doing about it. Did you pick that trash up? Did you haul it out? Did you pack that trash out? Or did you help try to remove that graffiti or whatever the situation was? Right. Pick up that abandoned camping equipment.
Start a movement.
You can individually start a movement in your own community just like that, by sharing what you see, letting other people be aware of what's really going on out there, and sharing what you're doing about it. When you do that, that will do way more than I think anything else that you can do. You can use social media for good. At that point, social media is not being a negative influence. Social media is being a positive influence. And I just think it changes that narrative and it encourages other people to join you, because sometimes people just need to see others do it first. They don't want to see it
Absolutely.
weird. If someone else did it, it's not weird.
That's right. That's right. Benny, you are a good man. So there you have it. That's it. Yep, absolutely. This episode is just about in the books. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Benny. Want to thank him for joining us this week. Plug it in. How can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I would say on Instagram, The Real Benny Braden is a great location to kind of like keep up with me if you're trying to keep up with responsible stewardship or want to see where you can like join in and get involved or do a cleanup. It's we also have Instagram, Responsible Stewardship, or you can go to our website, responsiblestewardship.org. Get signed up for the newsletter and you won't miss anything.
You know what I think you're missing, Benny, is a TikTok account. There you go.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Okay. Hey, remember to check out the podcast on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com. Benny, I'm also looking to you to share a recommendation for a book, a movie, a documentary, some kind of adventure media to keep our listeners connected to the outdoors during the off season here. We're calling this our adventure media recommendation. And I'm already going to stipulate that people should watch Highline. But what else do you have for us?
Yes. Definitely check out Highline. Highline is an absolute must. Another great documentary is Through the Great Southwest. A good friend of mine, Darwin, in his company, Outdoor Evolution, made that documentary. You'll probably see my handsome beard inside that documentary as well. I have no speaking parts, but I do walk by the camera a few times. And there's actually one book that I think that would be interesting for people to read. And it's called, I think, Under the Smokies Moon or Chasing the Smokies Moon, something like that.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Nancy East, she's the current FKT holder for the Smokies 900 miler. But it kind of gives an insight of her FKT hike there in the Smokies because they approached it as a day hike versus like a backpacking trip like I did. And everybody that did, all the FKT holders in the Smokies, we all did it different. We have some that trail ran it, some that just day hiked, some that day hiked and did some backpacking too, and then some that did all backpacking. So it's really neat how we all approached it in a completely different way and had a great result from it either way.
Fantastic. Well, let's check that out. All right.
Yeah,
And
it's definitely a great book.
Good. That's a wrap from the John Freaking Muir studio. Any shout outs to friends and family? Plug it in.
I guess I would like to shout out to myself. I like myself, so I always wanted to do that. You hear people calling out on a radio show, say, hey, can I do a shout out? I'd like to shout out to my wife and my kids and my coworkers. I would just love to hear someone go on there and say, yeah, I would like to do a shout out to myself. I did really good on this podcast, and I think I knocked it out of the park, and I just really want to give myself good kudos for that. I just always thought that would be just so funny,
Well, you just did it, and you did hit it out of the park, Benny. So congratulations. Thank you so much.
Go.
All right.
Yes,
Well, thank you for tuning in. Always remember the trail is the trail. Doesn't care if you want to go downhill. Doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you spent the afternoon dodging lightning on the Highline Trail. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.
Yes.